The screaming started before I even got the coffee to my lips. It was a jagged, ugly sound, tearing through the morning mist that hung over the valley like a wet wool blanket. I paused, the ceramic mug hovering halfway to my mouth, and I just listened. You learn fast what a scream means. This one wasn't fear. It was a man trying to get bigger by making someone else smaller. "I don't care what your granddaddy signed," the voice bellowed, echoing off the pine trees that lined the property. "That creek is on my side of the survey line, and I'm fencing it off by Monday. You hear me? Monday?" I sighed. A long, weary exhalation that fogged up the window glass. I set the mug down on the rough-hewn railing of the porch. I had come to this cabin to escape voices like that. I had come here because my own voice had failed me in a warehouse in Chicago 3 months ago, and the silence of this valley was supposed to be the reset button on a hard drive that had crashed. But the universe has a twisted sense of humor. It likes to put a burnt-out crisis negotiator next door to a crisis. I walked to the edge of the porch, the old wood groaning under my boots. I looked across the field of tall, unkempt grass that separated my uncle's property from the farm next door. About 200 yards away, down by the rocky creek bed that marked the boundary, a tableau was unfolding. A large man in a red plaid shirt was looming over a woman, stepping into her space, trying to make her back up using nothing but mass and volume. But the woman wasn't backing up. I knew who she was, though we hadn't formally met. Danna Turner. I'd seen her driving the battered blue pickup truck into town, usually with 2 kids hanging out the windows like golden retrievers, hair flying in the wind. She was 39, looking perpetually tired in that bone-deep way that only single mothers know, but she carried herself with a kind of gritty grace. Right now, she was holding a clipboard against her chest like a shield. Her posture was rigid, her chin tilted up. She was smaller than him by a foot, lighter by 100 pounds, but she was standing her ground. "Listen to me, Jim." Her voice drifted over the damp grass. It was faint, but steady. No quaver. "The easement is recorded. It's in the deed. You can't block the water flow to the lower field." "Watch me," Big Jim roared, stabbing a thick finger toward her face. "I'm done subsidizing your weed patch." That was it. The itch started. A heat crawled up my neck. My jaw locked. The world narrowed to 6 feet of wet grass between me and him. The sad clown part of me wanted to stay on the porch and make a joke about his blood pressure to my houseplant. But the negotiator part of me was already running the calculations. Distance: 200 yards. Threat level: yellow, escalating to red. Leverage: social pressure. I vaulted over the porch railing. My knees protested 32 isn't old, but the mileage on my joints was high, but I ignored the twinge. I started walking across the tall grass. I didn't run. Running elevates the heart rate of the aggressor. Running signals panic. Running validates their power. You walk. You walk with a rhythm that says, "I am inevitable. I am calm. And I am the most dangerous thing in this field because I am the only one thinking." The wet grass soaked the legs of my jeans. The mist was cold on my face. As I got closer, I saw Danna flinch as Jim took another aggressive step, his shadow falling over her. "Morning," I called out. My voice wasn't loud. I didn't shout. I projected. I used the diaphragm, pitching the sound so it cut through the air without sounding shrill. It was a voice that demanded to be heard not by volume, but by weight. They both whipped around. Jim looked confused, his face a mottled map of red rage and purple veins. Danna looked relieved, then immediately wary, her eyes darting to me, and then back to Jim. "Who the hell are you?" Jim barked, squinting at me. "I'm Emmanuel," I said, stopping exactly 6 feet away. The triangulation point. I offered a smile that didn't reach my eyes, my professional specialty. "I'm renting the cabin next door. My uncle's place. I was just trying to enjoy my coffee. Really excellent Colombian roast, but it seems like we're having a neighborhood town hall meeting without the donuts." I love donuts. "Are there donuts?" Jim blinked. The non sequitur threw him off his rhythm. He had been winding up for a fight, expecting resistance, and instead, he got a guy in pajama pants talking about pastries. "This ain't your business, son." "Well, actually, it is," I said, keeping my hands visible and open at waist level. "Because yelling carries, and I'm on a very strict no-yelling diet. Doctor's orders. Stress, you know? My cortisol levels are a disaster. I tapped my chest. So, Jim, it is Jim, right? You look like a Jim. Strong jaw, commanding presence, plaid enthusiast. What's the issue that requires this much volume at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday? She's stealing my water, Jim spat, pointing a shaking finger at Danna. I turned to Danna. Up close, I could see the details I had missed from the porch. The fraying collar of her denim jacket, the smudge of dark soil on her cheekbone, the way her hands were gripping that clipboard so hard her knuckles were white. She didn't look like a thief. She looked like a woman holding up the sky, terrified that if she let go, it would crush everything she loved. Danna, I said softly, changing my tone. Soft. Respectful. Is that true? Are you stealing Jim's water? It's a deeded easement, she said, her voice tight but clear. My grandfather and his father signed it in 1980. The creek feeds the irrigation pond for the zinnias. If he fences it, the water stops. If the water stops, the crop dies. Right, I said. I looked back at Jim. I kept my face open, curious. So, Jim, we have a piece of paper from 1980, and we have some thirsty zinnias. Now, fencing is expensive. Lumber prices are through the roof right now. Have you seen the price of cedar? It's criminal. Jim frowned. I got plenty of fence posts. Sure, I nodded. But labor, time, digging holes in this rocky soil? That's back-breaking work. You really want to spend $3,000 and a bad back just to kill some flowers? Seems like a lot of effort for a negative return. It's the principle, Jim shouted, but the volume was lower. The rage was leaking out, replaced by defensiveness. Ah, principle, I said, nodding solemnly. Expensive hobby, principle. I once spent $500 trying to win a claw machine game out of principle, got a stuffed bear worth $2, felt like an idiot for a week. Danna let out a short, surprised sound. It might have been a laugh or a cough, but it broke the tension. Look, I said, my voice dropping into the register that meant business. The closure voice. Jim, you build that fence? She files an injunction. She has to. It's her livelihood. The sheriff comes out. Lawyers get involved. You spend $10,000 to save. What? A bucket of water? Or, we all take a breath. You go have some breakfast seriously. Get some eggs. Low blood sugar makes me cranky too, and we look at the paperwork like civilized neighbors. Jim glared at me, then at Danna. The adrenaline was fading, leaving him standing there in the wet grass, realizing he was screaming at a single mother in front of a stranger who wasn't scared of him. The shame was creeping in. You have until Monday, Danna, he grumbled, trying to salvage some dignity. I'm checking the survey lines. Monday, I repeated. Sounds like a plan. Have a good breakfast. Jim? He turned and stomped off toward his truck, his boots heavy on the ground. We watched him go. The silence rushed back in, filled with the sound of the creek bubbling over rocks and the call of a crow in the distance. Danna let out a long, shuddering exhale. Her shoulders slumped, the adrenaline crash hitting her all at once. Thank you, she said. I told you, I said, shoving my hands in my pockets to hide the slight tremor in my own fingers. I hate bad acoustics. Ruins the feng shui of the valley. She turned to face me fully. Her eyes were a hazel that seemed to shift with the light green, brown, gold, intelligent eyes. Wary eyes. You're Emmanuel? The guy hiding out in the old Miller cabin? Hiding out makes me sound like a fugitive. I grinned, trying to put the mask back on. I prefer strategically retreating or sabbaticalizing. Is that a word? Well, strategically retreating, Emmanuel. I'm Danna. She shifted the clipboard, relaxing her grip. I assume you're not actually a fan of donuts. I am a fan of anything with sugar and bad structural integrity, I said honestly. Are you okay? He was in your space. That's scary. I'm fine, she said, though she wrapped her arms around herself. I'm used to Jim. He smells weakness. Since my husband passed, well, Jim thinks the property line is flexible. He thinks I'm too busy with the kids and the farm to notice if he moves a stake a few feet. The word passed landed in my chest like a stone, and my grip tightened on the porch rail. Widow. Single mom. The weight she was carrying just doubled in my estimation. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be, she said, tightening her jaw. I can handle Jim. I wasn't ready for him this morning. I haven't had my coffee. It's hard to be a warrior without caffeine. A fatal error, I agreed. Go. Caffeinate. Regroup. She hesitated, looking at me with a mixture of curiosity and gratitude. You handled him well. You talk. Different. Deliberate. I talk for a living, I said, looking away toward the creek. Or I used to. Well, thanks, neighbor. She turned and walked back toward her farmhouse. I watched her go, the red of the zinnias in the field blazing against the green. The sad clown mask slipped off my face, leaving me standing in the cold mist feeling hollow. My chest hurt, not from the confrontation, but from the recognition. She was fighting a war she couldn't win alone, and I was a soldier who had forgotten how to fight. 2 days later, the isolation was starting to itch. I drove into town, ostensibly to get supplies for the cabin, but mostly just to hear human voices that weren't screaming. I was in the hardware aisle of the local feed and seed, staring at a wall of screws. There were hundreds of them. Zinc, stainless steel, coated, uncoated. It was overwhelming in a mundane way. I was trying to figure out which ones would fix a rotting porch railing, wondering why life didn't come with this kind of labeling. Use this for heartbreak. Use this for guilt. You need the 3-inch deck screws, a voice said behind me. I turned. Danna was there. She looked different today, less guarded, though still tired. She was wearing a t-shirt that said Plant Lady and jeans that had dirt on the knees. Hanging off her leg was a small boy with messy hair, and sitting in the cart was a little girl holding a stuffed rabbit by the ears. Deck screws, I repeated. Right, for the deck I don't have. For the porch railing you were leaning on, she said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. I saw it wobble when you vaulted over it the other morning. If you don't fix it, you're going to fall into the hydrangea bush. And that bush is older than both of us. That bush looks soft, I countered. I could use a nap. The boy, Leo, looked up at me. He had Danna's eyes that shifting hazel. He was sizing me up with the intense scrutiny only an 8-year-old can muster. Are you the funny man? I looked down at him. That depends. Who's asking? The IRS? If it's the IRS, I am absolutely devoid of humor. Leo giggled. Mom said the neighbor is a funny man who stopped Mr. Jim from yelling. Leo, Danna warned gently, her cheeks flushing slightly. I crouched down, ignoring the sharp ache in my knees. I put myself at Leo's eye level. Well, Leo, I am funny looking. Does that count? The little girl, Sophie, peered over the edge of the cart. She looked about 5. Do you have a dog? No dog, I said solemnly. Just a very demanding houseplant named Fernando. He's extremely quiet but very judgmental. They both laughed. It was a pure, unadulterated sound, a bright, chiming noise that acted like a balm on my nervous system. I hadn't heard a kid laugh in 3 months. Not since Chicago. We have a dog, Sophie announced proudly. His name is Barnaby. He smells like old cheese. Sophie, Danna groaned, hiding a smile behind her hand. He does not smell like cheese. He smells like a dog. I stood up, grabbing the box of 3-inch deck screws she had pointed out. Thanks for the tip. I prefer not to be defeated by shrubbery. Are you getting supplies for the gym situation? I asked, nodding toward the rest of her cart. It contained a heavy-duty padlock and several no trespassing signs. Her face clouded over. The light went out of her eyes. I'm getting no trespassing signs. And a new lock for the gate. He drove by slowly yesterday. Just watching. Escalation, I murmured. Classic Tier 1 response. Presence as intimidation. Excuse me? Nothing, I said quickly. Just be careful with signs. She looked at me, searching my face. She was smart. She saw through the funny man act. What did you do, Emmanuel? Before you came here to listen to the corn grow? You handled Jim like you had a script. I was a crisis negotiator, I said. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. Chicago PD. Her eyes widened. Oh, yeah. Oh! I shifted the box of screws from one hand to the other. Now I negotiate with raccoons over trash can access. The raccoons are winning. They have better organization. Well, she said, her voice softer, laced with a new kind of understanding. If you ever want to negotiate with a golden retriever who thinks he's a lapdog, feel free to stop by. Barnaby is a terrible listener, but he's a good hugger. I might take you up on that, I said. I watched them walk away toward the checkout. Acts of service. She needed safety. I needed purpose. I looked at the screws in my hand. Then I looked at the aisle, marked security. I bought the screws. And a motion sensor floodlight. The next week was a blur of quiet integration. I fixed my porch railing. Danna was right. It was a death trap. Then, under the guise of testing my drill, I walked over to her farm. I found her in the barn, wrestling with a stubborn latch on the grain bin. Need a hand? I asked. She jumped, then relaxed when she saw me. You're sneaky for a city guy. It's the sneakers, I said. I wanted to ask permission to install something. On the side of your barn facing the creek, I held up the floodlight. It's solar, I explained. Motion activated. If Jim comes creeping around at night to move stakes or check the water line, you'll know. It puts the spotlight on him. Bullies hate spotlights. They thrive in the gray areas. Danna looked at the light, then at me. You don't have to do this, Manny. I can't pay you. I needed to test the masonry bit on my drill. I lied effortlessly. New bit. Very exciting stuff. I'm a simple man with simple joys. She rolled her eyes, but she didn't tell me to stop. Okay, but you're staying for lemonade. I installed the light. It took 20 minutes. It was precise work drilling into the old wood, sealing the edges with silicone, adjusting the angle of the sensor so it would catch a truck but not a deer. When I climbed down the ladder, Leo was waiting for me. Can you skip stones? He asked. Leo, I am the Olympic champion of stone skipping. Or I would be, if it was a sport. I spent the next hour by the creek with the kids. It was safer than spending time with Danna. I showed Leo how to find the flat, smooth stones. I let Sophie put wildflowers in my hair while I sat on the grass. They were starving for a male presence that wasn't shouting or leaving. And I was starving for a reality that wasn't grim. Twice, the floodlight snapped on at midnight, nothing there but tire tracks and wet dirt. It was a reminder that the peace was fragile, but the inner wound was always there. The guilt. Every time I laughed at Sophie's jokes, I felt a pang in my gut. You shouldn't be happy. You failed. That kid in Chicago didn't get to grow up, and here you are playing in the dirt. Danna watched us from the porch, a glass of lemonade in her hand. When I walked back up, dusting off my jeans, she handed me the glass. You're good with them, she said. They're good kids, I said. They make it easy. Why did you leave? She asked. It wasn't an accusation. It was an invitation. She was looking at my hands, which were shaking just a little from the exertion. I paused, gripping the cold glass. The condensation wet my palm. I lost a kid, I said. The humor was gone. The sad clown mask was on the floor, shattered. Hostage situation? Domestic dispute. The father, he was spiraling. I thought I had him. I thought I had him talked down. I read the baseline wrong. I missed the trigger. I stopped. I couldn't tell her the rest. The sound of the shot, the silence after. Danna didn't flinch. She didn't offer platitudes. She didn't say it wasn't your fault or God has a plan. She just set her glass down and stepped closer. I'm sorry, she said simply. I talk for a living, I said, my voice rough, scraping against my throat. And I ran out of words. When it mattered most, I ran out of words. Maybe you just need new words, she said. She reached out and brushed a smudge of dirt from my forearm. Her touch burned, grounding me in the present moment. Or maybe you just need to listen for a while. The corn grows pretty loud if you pay attention. We sat there in the silence, the air between us charged with something that terrified me. It was warmth. It was potential. Jim is coming back Monday, she said, breaking the moment, pulling her hand back. He sent a letter. From a lawyer. He's claiming the easement was temporary and expired when my grandfather died. Let me see the letter, I said. Man, let me see it. Please. Let me look at the threat assessment. She nodded. We went inside. Her kitchen was chaotic, filled with kids' drawings and canning jars. It smelled of vinegar and dill and sugar. It felt alive. I read the letter at the table. It was legal gibberish, designed to intimidate. This is garbage, I said, tossing it onto the table. It's a standard intimidation tactic. He cites a statute that was repealed in 2005. He's banking on you not knowing that. He knows you don't have the money to fight it in court. He's trying to bleed you out with anxiety. It's working, she whispered, sinking into a chair. I have $2,000 in the operating account. A retainer is 5. If I lose the water, I lose the zinnias. If I lose the zinnias, I miss the wholesale contracts. If I miss the contracts, I lose the farm. You don't need a lawyer, I said. You need a negotiator. You need someone who knows how to change the game. I can't pay you. I accept payment in tomatoes, I said, forcing a smile. And maybe a drawing from Sophie. I need new art for my fridge. Fernando is tired of looking at the blank expanse of stainless steel. The threat escalated on Friday. I was on my porch, trying to read a book, when I heard the engine. It was a deep, mechanical growl, heavy machinery. I looked over. A yellow bulldozer was rumbling down the dirt road, heading straight for the property line. Big Jim was driving a pickup truck behind it. I didn't walk this time. I ran. I vaulted the railing and sprinted across the field. My boots pounded the earth. Danna was already there, standing in front of the creek. She looked tiny against the yellow steel of the dozer. Leo and Sophie were on the porch, watching, terrified. "Turn it off!" Danna screamed, waving her arms. Jim got out of his truck, slamming the door. "I gave you warning. We're clearing the brush. The fence goes up today." The dozer operator, a guy I didn't recognize, revved the engine. The blade lifted, gleaming in the sun. I slid in between Danna and the machine. I could feel the heat radiating from the engine. I held up one hand to the operator, palm flat, fingers spread. The universal sign for stop. I made eye contact. I didn't look angry. I looked bored. I looked like I had all the time in the world. "Cut the engine," I shouted. Not a request, a command. The operator hesitated. He looked at Jim. "Don't listen to him," Jim yelled, his face purple. "Dig it up. It's my land." I walked up to the cab of the dozer. I climbed up the tread until I was face to face with the driver. He looked young, unsure. "Hi," I said. "I'm Emmanuel." I lifted my phone where he could see it. "I can start recording right now." I tapped the screen. "This is a disputed boundary line. If that blade touches the dirt, you are personally liable for criminal trespass and destruction of property. Not Jim. You. You could lose your license. You're risking your bond. Your insurance won't cover willful negligence." I leaned in closer. "Is Jim paying you enough to lose your livelihood today? Is he paying you enough to never work in this county again?" The driver looked at me. He looked at Danna, standing firm. He looked at Jim, who was screaming incoherently. The driver killed the engine. The silence that followed was deafening. "I'm out," the driver said. "Sort your mess out, Jim. I ain't losing my ticket for this." I hopped down. I walked over to Jim. "Jim," I said, keeping my voice low, intimate. "This is the part where you leave. You can't." "I can," I interrupted. I'd looked up the parcel records the day Jim first screamed. The county site still had the old plat scans. The easement isn't just deeded. It's a conservation restriction tied to the watershed. You can't touch that water even if you own the land, which you don't. Mess with a protected waterway and the fines get brutal more than most farms can survive. "Do you want to gamble on that, Jim?" I stepped into his space. "Do you have the capital for that kind of risk, Jim? Or do you have a bad temper and a bully complex?" Jim's mouth opened and closed. He looked at the silent bulldozer. He looked at the driver packing up. He looked at Danna, who was staring at me like I had just summoned lightning from a clear blue sky. "Get off my land," Danna said. Her voice wasn't shaking. It was steel. Jim spat on the ground. "This isn't over." "It is," I said. "Go home. Hug your wife. Rethink your life choices." Jim waved the driver off. The bulldozer backed up, beeping loudly. They retreated down the road. I turned to Danna. The adrenaline was dumping into my system, making my hands tingle. My heart was racing, a chaotic rhythm I knew too well. "You okay?" I asked. She didn't answer. She took 2 steps and threw her arms around my neck. It wasn't a polite hug. It was fierce, desperate, and warm. She buried her face in my shoulder. I froze for a second. The contact was electric. Then, instinct took over. I wrapped my arms around her waist. holding her up. I smelled sunshine and soil and lavender laundry detergent. I felt her heart hammering against my chest, syncing with mine. "You saved us," she whispered into my neck. "You actually stopped him." "I just used the rules," I mumbled into her hair. "Bullies hate rules." She pulled back, her face inches from mine. The look in her eyes shifted. It wasn't just gratitude anymore. Her eyes held mine for a beat too long, steady, frightened, and brave all at once. "Manny?" she breathed. She leaned in. I almost leaned in. Then, I stopped. The kids were watching, and I wasn't going to blur their world with mine. I wanted to replace the memory of death with this pulse of life, but I couldn't risk them. I stepped back, gently. I put a polite distance between us. "The kids?" I said softly. Danna blinked, flushing pink. She looked toward the house. "Right, the kids." "I should go," I said, my voice tight. I need to. I need to file that report with the EPA to make sure the threat holds. Paperwork. Lots of paperwork." "Manny," she said, catching my hand before I could turn away. "Stay for dinner. Please. We're having spaghetti. Sophie makes the sauce. It's crunchy, but it's good." I looked at her hand on mine. Her fingers were rough, calloused, strong. I wanted to hold on, but the guilt surged up the voice that said I was broken, that I would only bring my darkness into her light. "I can't," I said. "Not tonight. I have to go." I walked away. I walked back to my empty cabin. I sat in the dark and listened to the silence. It didn't feel like a cure anymore. It felt like a prison. For 3 days, I kept my distance. I worked on the legal paperwork for Danna, emailing contacts, solidifying the easement defense. I dropped the files in her mailbox at night like a thief. I was the sad clown again, hiding the pain, hiding the longing. On the 4th day, Danna found me. I was sitting by the creek, the disputed line, skipping stones into the water. She sat down next to me on the grass. She didn't say anything for a long time. She just watched the ripples. "Why are you hiding?" she asked finally. "I'm not hiding. I'm strategizing." "It's a tactical pause." "You're running," she corrected. "You're scared. You stood up to a bulldozer, but you're scared of a spaghetti dinner." "I am terrified," I admitted. I tossed a stone. It sank without skipping. "Danna, I'm a mess. I'm burnt out. I'm unemployed. You have a life here. You have kids. You have stakes." "I do," she said. "And they miss you." Sophie asked why the funny man doesn't come over anymore. Leo asked if you were mad at us. I don't want to complicate your life. I don't want to be the guy who comes in, fixes a problem, and then breaks down in your living room. My life is already complicated, Manny. I almost lost my farm. You stopped that. She turned to me, forcing me to look at her. But you didn't just save the farm. You made me laugh. I haven't laughed in 2 years. Not really. Not like that. She reached out and took my hand. Her touch anchored me. "What if my kids find out?" she asked. It was the question that had been haunting me, the barrier I had erected. Don't get involved. Don't hurt the kids. I looked at her. I looked at the farmhouse in the distance, where 2 kids were playing in the yard, safe because of what we had done. I watched Leo wobble on the branch and my hands moved before my thoughts did. I stepped in closer. Stayed. "What if they do?" I asked gently. "They've lost so much," she whispered. "I don't want to confuse them. I don't want to bring someone in who's just going to leave when the reset is over." I squeezed her hand. "I'm not leaving, Danna. The reset is over. This, being here, being useful, being near you, that's the reality. The city was the dream. A bad one." I looked her in the eye. "And if they find out about us?" I said, the line forming in my head, the truth of it ringing clear as a bell. "Then, they'll see their mom happy." Danna stared at me. Her eyes filled with tears. "They haven't seen that in a long time," she choked out. "Then it's time," I said. She bridged the last inch. I let it happen, then I pulled back first, steadying my breath. It wasn't like the movies. It was grounding. It was a promise that I wasn't just passing through. The Harvest Festival was 2 weeks later. The entire community was there. We had set up a long table in the field, near the creek. The zinnias were in full bloom. A riot of orange and pink and red. Big Jim was there, surprisingly. He was eating a burger, looking sheepish. I had negotiated a face-saving exit for him. We allowed him to use a small portion of the water runoff for his cattle trough in exchange for dropping the claim and resurveying the line at his expense. A win-win. He got water. We got peace. I stood by the grill, flipping burgers. I was wearing an apron that Sophie had painted. It said Grill Master in crooked, colorful letters. Danna walked over. She came up beside me, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled like she'd just finished work, and for once, her shoulders weren't braced for a fight. She stood next to me, bumping her shoulder against mine. "You're burning the buns," she teased. "It's called char," I said dignifiedly. "It's a flavor profile. You wouldn't understand. It's highly technical." Leo ran up, breathless, a grass stain on his knee. "Manny, Manny, can you lift me up to the tree branch? The one by the tire swing? What's the magic word?" I asked, pointing the spatula at him. "Please." "Wrong. The magic word is rutabaga." Leo laughed. "Rutabaga." I set the spatula down. I lifted him up, swinging him onto the low branch. He scrambled up, shouting victory. I turned back to Danna. She was watching me, a soft smile on her face. "They found out," she said quietly. "The kids. Sophie asked if you were my boyfriend this morning." I froze. "What did you say?" I told her yes. Danna smiled. She said, "Good. He tells good jokes." And he fixed the porch. I let out a laugh. A real one. Deep from the chest. The guilt was still there. A small shadow in the corner of the room. But it was fading. It was being crowded out by the light of this place. By these people. I reached out and took Danna's hand. Right there in front of God and Big Jim and the whole town. "I'm not just the funny man anymore," I said. "No," she agreed, squeezing my fingers. "You're the guy who stayed." After the festival, Danna slid a spare key into my palm. "Not as a favor," she said. "As family logistics. I need someone to water the zinnias when I'm chasing kids." "And Fernando?" I asked. "Can he come?" "Fernando has a spot on the windowsill," she said. I looked at the key in my hand. It was small, cold, and heavy. It was the heaviest thing I had ever held, and the best. "Ready for a burger?" I asked. "Always," she said. We stood there, anchored in the chaotic, beautiful mess of a life reclaimed, watching the sun go down over the farm that was safe, and the family that was finally whole. You know, for a long time, I thought strength was about how much you could endure in silence. I thought fixing things meant fighting. But I learned that the strongest thing you can do is let someone in. Turns out I didn't need perfect words. I just needed to show up the next morning and keep showing up. If you liked this story, please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.